You should be sending offers for these players in your fantasy football leagues because your league mates are idiots and they're going to short these players when they actually shouldn't. And these guys could win you a fantasy football championship. Let's talk about Jayden Reed first. Obviously, he had an explosive week 1, right? And most of the time when you have guys come out and they perform this well in week 1, most of the time you can't buy them. But something happened at the end of that game, and I think everybody saw it with his little pop in his knee, and Jordan Love is going to be out for a couple weeks. Whoop. And I have read some people say as much as Jayden Reed is going to be unstartable without Jordan Love at quarterback. But let's talk through that a little bit. Jayden Reed in week 1 carry for 33 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, that big touchdown carry. 4 of 6 receptions for 138 yards and a touchdown. And so obviously when you're talking about when you're talking about targets, when you're talking about efficiency, he was very efficient with the touches he got, right? He had 5 total touches for like 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not going to happen every week. And so he's not going to score 31 points every week. But even with Jordan Love out, I feel better about Jayden Reed than I do Christian Watson, Romeo Dove, or Dontavian Wicks. Why? Because he is the slot wide receiver in Green Bay. What I'm worried about with Jayden Reed, admittedly, are the plays where he is down the field where Jordan Love has to make very deep passes to get Jayden Reed the ball. I get that. Do keep in mind, they're going to give him a fair amount of carries each game, probably 1 to 3 carries every single game. They did this last year as well. They are going to get him some easy targets no matter who the quarterback is, and he is probably going to score at least 6 or 7 fantasy points a week. Now, with that being said, I would be the first to tell you Malik Willis is awful. He is so bad. He's awful, terrible, legit. He makes almost every single player on this team a lot less fantasy valuable, including Jayden Reed. But this is Jayden Reed who just came out and scored 31 points with Jordan Love. So when Jordan Love comes back in week 5 or 6, or maybe it's week 6 or 7 or 7 or 8, it doesn't matter. It's before week 14, right? When do you actually want Jayden Reed on your team with Jordan Love throwing him the ball? In the playoffs. I will gladly pay for Jayden Reed now because he is somehow, yes, this is true, he is somehow cheaper now than he was before week 1 after putting up 30 points. Because again, the Jordan Love injury has completely skewed people's opinion on him, and people think that he is basically going to be a sell high because he came out and did this and now he doesn't have Jordan Love. If people want to sell high, I'll buy high. And I'm not really buying high. You're actually buying low compared to what you could get in terms of return on investment at the end of the season with Jayden Reed. I would gladly send anybody that was going next to him in drafts for him now in fantasy football. And I think there are a lot of people that are doing that. And so with that being said, I think he is going to be one of the better buy targets early in the season just because, again, the Jordan Love injury has opened up this buy window, allowing us to get one of these premier wide receivers on our team if we need wide receiver help.
Yep. And not only does he have big playability, he also has the safest floor because he is that slot wide receiver where, you know, if he doesn't get 138 yards off of 4 receptions, he's probably going to get more targets anyways with a worse quarterback who needs a security blanket with easy targets, and those are his tight ends and those are his slot wide receiver. It's not taking shots downfield with Christian Watson. He's not the backup QB isn't going to be able to get that to Christian Watson. Romeo Doubs, we don't really know. He had 7 targets last week, right? So Romeo Doubs could be a factor here as well. But again, Jayden Reed, let's trust the guy that's actually produced. Why would we bet on him not producing? I just don't understand it. I also think Drake London is going to be just fine. Everybody calm down. Everybody let's take a deep breath together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Kirk Cousins is not Desmond Ridder. Kirk Cousins is not Desmond Ridder. Kirk Cousins is not Desmond Ridder. This is not the Arthur Smith offense. It is okay. It's okay. Kirk Cousins is in a brand new situation, in a brand new offense, brand new weapons. Bijan Robinson puts up 16 points without scoring a touchdown. That's great for him. Kyle Pitts gets a touchdown. That's great for him. Drake London, not a ton of targets, not a ton of yards, not a ton of opportunity when Kirk Cousins was under pressure a lot of the day and TJ Watt was making his life miserable. It's okay. I'm going to keep saying this because it really is going to be okay. I know everybody has PTSD with over-investing in Drake London last year in a horrible offense. This is not a horrible offense, all right? They've got a lot of wrinkles that they've got to iron out. They got a lot of things they got to figure out as an offense. It's probably going to take a couple of weeks for them to really start. Wow, I'm getting all excited. For them to really start clicking on all cylinders, right? We saw this last year with an experienced team. In Kirk Cousins with J. Jeff and Addison and Hawk. They started slow. They lost a bunch of games. They started out like 1-4 or something like that. I don't think the Falcons are going to start out 1-4, but I do think that you're going to see a few growing pains here and there. And if you can capitalize on getting Drake London at a discount, I think you're going to be loving yourself in the middle of the year. Towards the end of the year, when you're making a playoff push and Drake London is being incredibly productive and getting a ton of volume, Kirk Cousins' volume didn't just disappear. It's not gone. Kirk Cousins isn't ending the role that he played in Minnesota's offense. He was paid $100 million guaranteed from the Falcons to do what he did in Minnesota. All right? So everybody breathe, exhale, all of the PTSD that you have from last year. It's going to be okay with Kyle Pitt. It's going to be okay with everyone there. It's going to be okay with Drake London especially. Please, if you have a league mate in your league that's freaking out about Drake London, go and capitalize and thank us later.
I mean, I don't think it could have been a worse week 1 matchup for them.
No,
I mean, and circumstances defense. As well with him. Yeah. I mean, like it altogether, I still have faith in Drake London, and obviously, Kyle Pitts scored a touchdown today. That should show you all the upside you need to know for that passing game. All right, let's talk. Okay, before we get into this, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, you guys are homers, blah blah blah." I don't want to hear about this. You guys talk about.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna. I'll start with this. Anthony Richardson
looked terrible.
He sucked today. The Colts
and people will tell you that he looks good. Don't listen to it. He did not look good.
The Colts were not good today.
No.
They were not good. There was nothing good about them. There was nothing good about their passing game. Anthony Richardson completed 9 plays. The Colts had 45 snaps to the Texans 80 today. It was straight up bad.
Mixon had 30 carries for like 158 yards.
We got that out of the way. Do you believe us? We don't even like our own team right now. But here's the thing with Pittman. Pittman led the team in snaps for wide receivers. He led the team in routes run. He led the team in targets. And he got almost all of his targets in the first half. He was being targeted pretty heavily. He caught a fair amount of those. He ended up with like 5 points. He had 4 of 8 receptions. So he had like 4 of 7, I think, at halftime, and didn't really get targeted after halftime. They started running the ball. Jonathan Taylor got a little bit hot, and then, they also just didn't run a lot of plays. As the year goes on, and even into next week, Michael Pittman, is going to get more targets than this. He just is going to get more targets than this. Pierce is not going to score a long touchdown every week. Doolin is not going to score a long touchdown every week. Those guys were extending those drives and essentially eliminated any chance of Michael Pittman getting work on those drives. It was part of the reason that they only ran 45 plays. But with that being said, Pittman is a high floor, high target option for your fantasy team that a lot of people are going to be completely writing off after week 1 because they saw Anthony Richardson 9 completions and Michael Pittman 5 points. Admittedly, it was bad. It was quite bad. He had Stingley on him the entire game. It was not a great matchup. We probably should have seen that coming. The game plan for the Colts definitely going to feature Michael Pittman more in coming weeks. There's no doubt about this, and even, we are dreading having to watch our team play again. It's bad. We are not happy. We do not like our team right now. And we are telling you, with our reputation on the line, Michael Pittman, this is a down week for Michael Pittman. Yeah. He's probably going to be a safe option moving forward. He still can and will, and you saw this in the catches he had. Anthony Richardson can get Michael Pittman the ball.
Yeah.
Yes, Anthony Richardson's going to get the other team the ball too. I know.
He is also going to get Michael Pittman the ball way more consistently, though, because, again, even though we only saw Anthony Richardson have 9 completions this week, I know people were saying that his volume was going to be way less than Minshew's, and while that was merited to an extent, he has shown in greater sample sizes in the past, Anthony Richardson has, that he can provide more volume than 9 completions in a game, right? This was a ridiculous game where they were trying to run the frick out of Jonathan Taylor, which they did. They gave him 16 carries. Anthony Richardson ran the ball 6 times. And that's just something where they knew the weakness for Houston could potentially be the run game defensively, and JT was able to capitalize and get a touchdown. It didn't show production-wise, but JT was fine. But they also were just playing catch-up, and they didn't have a lot of time on the field. So I don't think you're going to see other teams like Houston own the time of possession like Houston did week 1. So expect a lot more opportunities for Pittman. And again, the opportunities were already there. 8 targets. 8 targets is totally good. And he's going to get more than that. So next guy that we're going to have here is, see, everything's all totally good. It's all fine. I feel like this is a therapy session for no, not for the Colts. I'm just saying this buys video. I feel like is the therapy session for people that are panicking about players. I'm like, just calm down.
It's essentially meditation.
Sun's going down. It's real low. Tank Dell is going to be our next guy here. We're going to go on the other side of the ball. I think Tank Dell. As much as this sounds counterintuitive, since he scored 7 points and Diggs had 20 and Nico Collins had 15 and Tank Dell seemed like the third option there, it sounds dumb to say that I'm actually really excited about Tank Dell this year after seeing the week 1 performance. Why am I excited? Because I know that almost every secondary in the NFL is better than the Colts secondary and is actually going to guard Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. And Tank Dell is kind of the do-it-all guy. You're talking about Tank Dell being the one that really is incredibly versatile in where he is all over the field. Stephon Diggs, it's official, guys. He's the slot wide receiver. He is the high floor, safe receiving asset in that offense. And Nico Collins didn't get most of his points until the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter. Tank Dell, for a majority of that game, had more targets than Nico Collins until he decided to go off at the end of the game. Nico Collins is the exact guy that Avery and I suspected that he would be, and demonstrated it in week 1. He's going to have phenomenal games, and he's going to look amazing because he is a very good wide receiver. So is Stephon Diggs. But Tank Dell is also, and with his ability to be all over the field and just be there for Tank Dell, or be there for himself.
That's important.
And be there for CJ Stroud when Collins and Diggs are covered by the best corners on every other defense. I think you're looking at a really solid outlook from a fantasy perspective for Tank Dell. Every single one of these guys, not every single one of these guys, Nico Collins and Tank Dell are going to have, they're going to be a little boom bust. They're going to have some down games. But Tank Dell's down game was 7 points off of 7 targets. And he only hauled in 3. I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Not to mention, Joe Mixon had 30 carries. I am all for Joe Mixon having a great season. I was pleasantly surprised with how good he did against a pretty stout Colts run defense, at least we thought. And he was amazing. He had like 25 to 30 points, depending on what formats you're in. Mixon had legit like one of his feature career games. Like, that was an awesome Joe Mixon showing. He ain't getting 30 touches a week. I know that for a fact. He'll get a lot of touches. He'll be the bell cow there. It's not going to be 30 touches, and he's not going to get those touchdown opportunities every single week because those receivers are going to be clicking on all cylinders, and Tank Dell is going to reap the benefits of that. So relax with Tank Dell. I know for a fact you're going to have a ton of people in your league that are like, Tank Dell, now we know he's the third option. Do not conclude what that wide receiver room is going to look like by one game, especially against a division rival that has one of the worst secondaries in the league.
Here's a quick little stat for you. Week 1 targets, Nico Collins had 7, Tank Dell had 7, Stephon Diggs had 6. Okay, so pretty even. Week 1 air yards, 112 for Collins, 105 for Dell, 9 for Diggs. 9.
There's no way that's real.
It absolutely is.
I mean, I believe it, but I'm also like, that is astronomically low.
And the kind of takeaway from this is be patient with Tank Dell because Tank Dell is getting the opportunities, getting the air yards. And last year he was returning on those a lot. You keep in mind, Tank Dell was going up against the Colts' only good cornerback today in Kenny Moore.
Right.
So, I mean, Kenny Moore is one of the best one of the best slot cornerbacks in the league.
Yep.
And he got paid as the highest paid slot cornerback in the league. He's not going to face that every week. So I think, obviously you have him off the field in 12 personnel, but I think most of these games with the Texans are probably going to be competitive. You're going to see him on the field a lot, so it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
And the last guy on this list is going to be Chris Godwin. You might be saying to yourself, why would you have Chris Godwin on this list? This dude just came out and absolutely ate it up because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers scored 37 points this week. Baker Mayfield threw for 4 touchdowns. He had 29 points himself. Rashad White had 13 points in a week where he did nothing. Mike Evans had 20, and Chris Godwin had 18. Jalen McMillan had 10 points. You're like, why would you buy Chris Godwin after he had 20 points this week? He had 8 targets. He did out-target Mike Evans, by the way. Mike Evans had 2 touchdowns, but he out-targeted. So Chris Godwin had more targets than anybody else in this team. Chris Godwin is playing out of the slot now. We said before the season, he's going back to the slot. He's more comfortable in the slot. He's more productive in the slot from a fantasy perspective. That's exactly what you saw. And he had a touchdown. So he had his classic 18, 19-point Chris Godwin game. Why would you buy him after that? Because people never adjust. We've learned this over and over with Chris Godwin, who is now 28 years old in his 7th season in the NFL. We have learned, 8th season in the NFL, we have learned that people never adjust for Chris Godwin. People never adjust for Chris Godwin appropriately. He's still going to be undervalued, and he has this upside all year long. Chris Godwin has, with the way the Buccaneers offense looks, not only last year, but in the first game, I think Mike Evans is still ridiculous, first of all. Still the best X in the league. Mm-hmm. I don't even think it's a question. he could be a wide receiver 1 again. He could.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know why we didn't see this coming. Chris Godwin could be a mid-wide receiver 2 this year. Baker could support both of them because, again, Chris Godwin is going to get those easy targets out of the slot, and he's going to return on his investment because he's going to be getting a lot of receptions. Again, he had 8 targets. He caught all 8 of them. He's getting high percentage throws. With that being said, again, I think when you're talking about his price, people never adjust. People are willing to sell Chris Godwins for super cheap. People think of Chris Godwin as a guy that's flexible. People think of Chris Godwin as a guy that is old and in a decent situation but not great. In reality, Chris Godwin is somebody that if he's starting in my wide receiver position, if I'm starting 3 wide receivers every week or even 2, I'm flexing or starting him every single week. Mm-hmm. He has that high a floor, but he also has the upside. When he gets a touchdown, the dude can score 20. And he can out-target Mike Evans, and Mike Evans can still produce because, again, he's an X. He has some of the best hands in the league. He can score touchdowns better than any. Mike Evans, from an efficiency standpoint, was the most efficient fantasy scorer from a wide receiver position in the league last year.
Yeah, and he got 2 touchdowns this week. And I know that everyone knows that Tampa isn't going to score 37 points every single week, which is probably why Chris Godwin is going to continue to be shorted for a little bit until we can see him consistently put up production in games where they're not putting up 37 points. But Baker Mayfield, honestly, he was a big surprise this week. I was really impressed to see him have 4 touchdown passes. Again, not going to happen every week, but you're looking at Mike Evans requiring 2 touchdowns for 20 points. Chris Godwin only 1 touchdown, 8 receptions for 83 yards. That is more sustainable when Tampa puts up 20 points in a week, right? As opposed to 37. And you're probably expecting Mike Evans to have the dud week as opposed to Chris Godwin now that Godwin is in the role that he was made to be in, right? This is not the same situation as last year. I think that's the one thing that Canales did wrong.
And as good as Mike Evans was last year, he had games of 3 points, 8 points, 1 point, 6 points, 5 points.
Yep.
Because when Mike Evans, and those were all games, my gosh, this is freaking hilarious. In the only games he didn't score touchdowns, they were 3, 8, 1, 10, 6, and 5. Every other game last year, he had a touchdown, and every single one of those games, he was not only in double figures, but he was over like 15 points and in the 20-point range in most of those. Yeah. He is literally, if he scores a touchdown, he's dominant, wide receiver 1. If he doesn't, he's either decent or he has a dud week. Yeah. And with Godwin, with the level of targets and the type of targets Godwin's going to get, he's going to be consistent for you. Consistency is key. It's important for your fantasy football team. You want a guy in Chris Godwin, hopefully, obviously getting old, can stay on the field, and I don't think that's going to be an issue with him. Obviously, he played all of last year, no problem. He did have a couple games he missed in 2022, but he played most of that year, no problem. 2021, obviously, he had the season-ending injury that year, but it's a guy who, now he's 28, has been able to stay on the field as well. He's a safe guy for your fantasy team. I think he's a great buy. I think he can be hyper productive. I think he's a higher upside than he did last year. I think he has one of the highest floors of any wide receiver in fantasy football this year. So go buy him on your fantasy football team. There you go. There are some week 1 wide receiver buy targets for you. Again, a lot of you guys are like, oh, can you give us some examples of trades? Too many league settings, too many variations, too many possibilities to do that. But drop in the comments, give us some example trades. We'll be happy to reply. Also, you can submit your trade questions at flockfantasy.com. If you go to flockfantasy.com/domain, you can get one of these team blueprints. When you sign up for the annual Mother Flocker tier, you get our rankings, you get the My Teams, you get the Green Light Start Sit tool, you get all of it. And you get a free team blueprint, like I said, with annual Mother Flocker tier and using code DOMAIN. You can also buy a team review. If you'd like us to review your team, you can get a team blueprint. You can get a live team blueprint. You can get a blueprint 2.0 on the site. So like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. Make sure you use code DOMAIN when you sign up. But we appreciate you guys. Drop a like. Make sure you subscribe if you play fantasy football. We'll see you later.